All right. Looks good. Let's see if I remember how to do this. I think I got it. In today's show, Damian Lillard returns after 7 games off, and the podcast is back after a 2-week hiatus. Portland rolls over the Pacers, and the future's looking bright, at least for now. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond, and you are once again listening to Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the only daily Trailblazers podcast that took 2 weeks off for paternity leave, but is back in action. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every weekday, coming at you 5 days a week, free on all platforms. We're back. Thanks for bearing with me while I was away. The Blazers struggled a little bit. We'll talk about that. Don't blame me, because Damian Lillard was gone too during my absence as well. Portland gets 2 wins over the weekend. They beat Utah in Salt Lake City. They beat the Jazz. Then on Sunday night, they come back and beat the Indiana Pacers 116-100. Let's do what we do here. We'll go fastest recap in the West, and then we'll take a look at where the Blazers are after 24 games, a check-in 30% of the way through the season, and kind of a recap of what we missed while your boy was gone. But first, let's do what we do. Fastest recap in the West. Blazers win 116-100. They led 28-24 after one. They led 54-49 at the break. Nurk had 12 in the first half. Dame had 11, Jerami Grant had 10, but Miles Turner was balling with 17 and 6 in the first half, and Portland just didn't ever get a comfortable lead against an Indiana Pacers team playing without their best player in Tyrese Halliburton. Andrew Nembhard is a really nice fill-in at point guard, but this was an undermanned Pacers team that has been punching above their weight class all year long. Their record is better than their talent should suggest. They've probably stolen a few games that they shouldn't have. Gravity is going to come back to them, and they're probably going to sink in the standings a little bit. But this is, this was a not very good team playing without its best player. And through the first 2 quarters, the Blazers didn't really handle them. Then the third quarter came and they handled them. Blazers outscored the Pacers 39-25 in the third quarter. Jerami Grant has 12 in that quarter. Ant has 11. If you're scoring at home, JG and Ant, 23. Indiana Pacers, 25. Portland went 15 of 24 in the third quarter. They assisted on 12 of those 15 field goals, did not commit a turnover, and that was your ball game. They're up 93-74 at the end of the third quarter. Couldn't put the Blazers completely away. The opening minutes of the fourth without a Dame in the game, the Blazers didn't give themselves an opportunity to end it. Pacers got as close as 11 on multiple occasions in the fourth quarter, but never got it into single digits, never truly threatened, and the Blazers win going away 116-111 to improve to 13-11. And 5-5 in the friendly confines of the Moda Center. Jerami Grant led the way, 28 points, 5 boards, 3 assists. Damian Lillard in his first game back after missing 7 games with a calf injury, 21 points and 6 assists to go with 4 boards. He also had 4 turnovers, 7 of 16 for Dame, 5 of 10 from 3. First time Dame touched it, or maybe not the first time he touched it, first time Dame shot it was a hard step back from the right-hand corner. Absolutely absurd swish. He's ready to go. He looked a little tired in the fourth quarter. The whole team looked tired. They played, Jerami and Ant both played in the 40-minute range on Saturday night in a really nice win, one of their best wins of the year, or just an important win of the year, to be sure, against the Jazz. Everybody looks gassed. Dame hasn't played in 2 weeks. He looked gassed in the fourth quarter, and the Blazers held on. Nurk had a impactful fourth quarter to kind of send that one home. Nurk finished with 19 points, 6 boards, and 4 assists. Anfernee Simons, 22 points and 6 assists. On the other side, Miles Turner finished with 24, but 17 in the first half. Buddy Hield had 22. Andrew Nembhard, 16 points, 8 assists. He's going to be good. He's going to be good. He was guarding Damian Lillard and has really good feel in the pick and roll. The other night I saw him guard LeBron James and hit a game winner. He's going to be good. Pacers have some intriguing young players, but this is not a particularly good team. The Blazers take care of business. The most important stretch of this game is that third quarter. That's when the Blazers won this game. That's your fastest recap in the West. Let's talk about the third quarter a little bit. This was where the game changed. Like I said, 15 of 24 from the field. Shoot 60% from the field. 12 of your 15 field goals are assisted. Excellent ball movements. No turnovers. It's been the Blazers' Achilles heel that they kind of just throw the ball over the court. Everybody gets in on the fun of turning the ball over in maddening ways. They didn't turn the ball over. They looked like a much better basketball team. Jerami Grant has 12 in that quarter. Anfernee Simons has 11. I think Damian Lillard was the best player on the floor for the Blazers in that quarter because he is the engine that lets them do what they do. Nobody on this team has the playmaking chops that Dame does. He can draw defensive attention. He can, he's kind of been a turnover machine this year, but he can get into gaps, draw second defenders, draw help. The Pacers sent double team and double team and double team and double team at Dame. And you know what he did? He got the ball out and made a play. He had just 5 points in the third quarter, but his presence, his gravity, the sort of scare, the fright he puts into the defense, it started it. And then the Blazers' second and third best players, Ant and Jerami Grant, they made them pay. This is like in some ways the platonic ideal of the Blazers. 3 guys with 20 plus. Nurk finished with 19. Like, they don't have a bunch of scoring punch off the bench, but that top trio of Jerami Grant, Anfernee Simons, and Dame, that's their future. And that's their future like in the near term. I understand age. That's their key to being a very good team this year is that trio being excellent. The last podcast I did before I took a little time off was about how good that trio has been. Then Dame played another game after I left, but then he went away and Jerami Grant and Ant were really good, but they were missing that other guy. That other guy was back in the third quarter, and his presence and his playmaking, he just greases the wheel, and the machine looks so special. The Pacers haven't been a very good defensive team. They play extremely fast. I believe Buddy Hield and Tyrese Halliburton are 1-2 in the league in transition 3-pointers attempted. They get them up. They run and they get them up. And the Blazers were getting killed by Indiana in transition in the first half. They cleaned it up. They stopped turning the ball over in the third quarter, and they won the game. They took, up 19, never got it back within single digits. You in a perfect world, you blow them out in the first 3 minutes with the bench in the fourth quarter, and you rest everybody and keep the starters out and all those things. But the Pacers have players, and they're not going away too. No one played crazy minutes in this game. Simons led the way with 36, but Dame 32, Jerami Grant 33, Josh Hart, who returned after a 2-game absence with a sprained ankle, he played 33. That's like normal starter minutes for a team that is built like the Blazers are built. Take care of business. Get your first 2-game winning streak in basically a month since the second week of November. Like they just haven't. They've had a tough go of it recently after a really hot start. They're not rolling again. They've won 2 in a row. But this was a game where they handled a bad team, and so often the mark of like how good is this group is. Do you handle a bad team? Do you take advantage? Can you just get an easy win against a team that you're better than? The Blazers did that. The third quarter allowed them to do that. Onward. Now they get a little time off. They don't play again until Thursday. Like they're in the midst of a 4-game homestand, and we'll talk about how the schedule is going to ease up on them a little bit. But they've got some time to rest. They've got a 2-game winning streak, and they're in a pretty good spot at 13-11. Prior to me stepping away from the podcast, and I'm not going to mention that again. This is the last time. I was gone for a couple weeks. Now I'm back. Let's go. But the big talk was the 20-game mark. And the number that I had circled was the Blazers get to 12 wins by the 20-game mark. Typically during the Damian Lillard era, teams that go 12-8 in their first 20 games had been 50-plus win teams, have been teams that finish with home court advantage in the playoffs and make a run into the playoffs. Like that had been the mark of good teams. Not every team that got deep into the playoffs did that, but every 50-plus win team that was competitive hit at least 12 wins. That 3 such instances of that in the Damian Lillard era. Blazers only won 11-9 in their first 20 games. Things got a little bit dicey. So let's do a 24-game check-in. We're 29 and some change percent, 30% into the season. Let's do a 24-game check-in in to close the show. That's what we'll do. We'll talk about sort of where the Blazers are, a status update, state of the union. I've missed a little bit of time, so let's catch up and talk big picture stuff before we spend the rest of the week dialing in on some specifics. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event or a birthday or a holiday, or if you just want to drive something fancy when you're out there. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and you just need to get from A to B. Whatever you're looking for, you're going to find it with Turo. Plus, you can test drive the new electric vehicle that you've had your eye on to see how it fits your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars. Find your drive at Turo.com. All right. Let's talk check-in. The Blazers are 13-11. They find themselves in a legitimately a good spot, even if it didn't always feel like it was going to be a good spot a while ago. The Western Conference is all jumbled up. The Blazers are currently tied for 6th in the West at 13-11. They are, as we stand here, a game and a half out of third place, 2.5 games, if you want to do it, out of second place. They are also 2.5 games out of 13th. That's how tight it's going to be all year. That's why when they struggled a little bit while Damian Lillard was out, it felt worse. But I don't think they're in that bad a shape. Let's look at it a little bit closer. 13-11, like I said, tied for 6th in the West. It's too early to look at the standings, but in the mix. That's the important part. In the mix. Not out of it, but like a bad week, you're 12th. A good week, you're 2nd. It's going to be like that all year long. The West is wide open, and with the Kings and Jazz being better than we thought, and the Lakers looking like a basketball team again, there are probably 12, depending on what happens with the Minnesota Timberwolves, 12 very good, like very solid competitive teams in the West. The Blazers are one of those 12, without a doubt. Overall, the Blazers are 12th in offense and 23rd on defense. But over the last 10 games, they have admittedly struggled. 3-7 since November 17th. I recorded a podcast on November 17th. So in the 10 games, 11 show days I missed, 3-7 in those games, 2-5 without Damian Lillard. During that stretch, 15th in offense, 25th in defense. They had struggled, and even before that, in that 10-game stretch, they were 18th in offense and 28th in defense over those 10 games for the 28th best net rating. Beating the Pacers and beating the Pacers in the way that they did kind of boosted their numbers. They look a lot better after that win, but like you're not going to say, oh, that take away that Pacers game to make them look worse. That's not how this works. But overall, a slightly above average offense at 12th and a below average, kind of where you thought they might be, defense as 23rd. I think heading into the season, this is kind of what I thought they would be. I'm much more concerned about their offense being outside of the top 10 than I am their defense being in the bottom 10. I thought this team had top 5 upside on offense and kind of like top 17 upside on defense. I thought it was going to be maybe like at best case scenario, like a slightly below average defense, which they absolutely can still be, but they have had some moments, and especially over the last 10 days, where they've been worse than that, significantly worse than that. They're a work in progress, and the sort of the success that they had early in the season hasn't come back. They give up. Teams have figured out how to get easier buckets against their zone. They're switching man-to-man defense. That hasn't been as stingy, and maybe some of it is just the variance of shooting luck through the first 10 games. They were getting a little bit lucky on. They haven't really made a massive drop in effective field goal percentage, but it's changed a little bit. And I think like some of it is just things are close. They've had a couple bad weeks, or they've had 2 bad weeks in a row, and you drop back to somewhere that is totally believable that overall through the first 24 games, 23rd on defense, according to Clean the Glass. Injuries are also just part of the story for this team. They're part of the story. Keon Johnson hasn't played since November 9th with a left hip strain. He was not on the injury report and then suddenly on the injury report prior to the game against the Charlotte Hornets and then has not played since. Damian Lillard had missed the last 7 games, re-aggravating his right calf injury, came back and looked like himself. Drew Eubanks has been dealing with back spasms and a hip contusion, and tonight he was listed as questionable, started to play, and looked like a dude kind of working through it, laboring a little bit. Josh Hart had missed the previous 2 games with a left ankle sprain, and Nazir Little, while I was out, fractured a bone in his hip socket on November 29th, and he's out for at least 6 weeks. It's like a hairline fracture of the ball that meets your hip socket. It sounds terrible. There's shots of him on the road walking, moving around on crutches. Bummer for Nazir Little, like truly a bummer for the Blazers, bummer for Nazir Little. You never want to see someone get hurt. And Naz has just struggled with so many injuries that when he had this sort of weird kind of non-contact take a step strangely on his left leg and clearly go down, you knew something was not right with him, and this is bad news for him. So he's out until at least the new year. Another sort of news and notes thing before we get too far ahead is the Blazers signed two-way big man Abu Baji. He's a 7'2" defensive presence who's played in the G League, played in the French League. He's a two-way guy. I think fans are excited to see him, and I totally understand you want to see the shiny new part, but there's a reason he probably wasn't in the league before that. I think I like the Blazers. They waived Olivier Sarr, who had a fractured wrist. It's a bummer for Olivier Sarr. Gets hurt and loses his job. This gives them more insurance. Baji has not made his debut. He was not active tonight. Don't expect him to sneak into the rotation at any point in the future. He is the opportunity for them if they have injuries. Now they have a emergency solution, a true big man who could play some defense. The scouting reports I've read, Adam suggest that he's pretty raw on offense, but has some presence and athleticism inside. I'd like to see him play, sure, but I don't think he's going to be a game changer. So during this stretch without Dame, they go 2-5. The Blazers, 3-7 in the last 10 and 2-5, and they've after this 10-4 start, they've kind of they've come back to the pack, right? They've come back to the pack. But for my money, they have only had 2 truly bad losses during that stretch when considering who was available on both sides. The first Brooklyn game on November 17th, Dame played in that one. It was the last game he played before he got hurt. And Ben Simmons played in that one, but no Kyrie Irving, and the Blazers that's a game you need to win. They kind of just wilted in the closing seconds of that one a little bit. Just didn't play well in crunch time, did not play well in crunch time, and that was a frustrating, probably just a straight up bad loss. And then the home loss to the Clippers, up 18 in the third quarter, up double digits heading into the fourth, an 18-point lead with 4 minutes left in the third quarter in the way the NBA works now is not a massive lead. But up 13 heading into the fourth at home against a team not playing Paul George, against a team without Kawhi Leonard, against a team head trauma-induced Reggie Jackson, who had taken a hard fall in the first half. He gets going in the fourth. Norman Powell gets going in the fourth, and you lose that game. That was just a bad loss. That was a bad loss. To me, those are the only 2 of bad losses during the last 10, during a stretch when they weren't very good. If the Blazers are 5-5 during this stretch, they're like the 3rd best team in the West. You don't get to get those back, right? I'm not saying okay, just erase those, put them in the win column, and actually they're this. But I'm suggesting that while there was a lot of doom and gloom during the Blazers' struggles, I only think they had 2 nights where they really blew it, where they should have won the game and didn't, where they should have gone into a game favored and taken care of business. It is what it is. The Nets are playing a little bit better. Blazers also lost to the Lakers in LA. Lakers they're a better basketball team. They have figured it out over the last week. Anthony Davis found himself, rekindled some magic from Disney World or something. So even that loss where the Blazers kind of got handled, I don't think losing a bunch of those games without Dame and went 2-5 without Dame, I don't see that as this damning big thing. I don't even see it. I don't really see it as a big deal. And in fact, I saw some true silver linings in the time that Dame missed that played itself out as the Blazers, beat the Indiana Pacers today. Let's talk about that. A true silver lining, what we learned while Damian Lillard was gone in the final segment. Join me there. But first, let me tell you about BetOnline. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. You can bet on NBA games all day long. You can live bet, you can pre-bet, you can get whatever you want. You're going to find more lines, more props, more odds than anywhere else. You can also get it on NHL action while the World Cup is going on. You're going to find that. Still got college football as we head into bowl season. Still got the stretch run of the NFL. It's all there on BetOnline plus any other sports you're looking for. So don't wait. Head on over to betonline.net. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's talk about what we saw from the Blazers without Damian Lillard in the lineup. They go 2-5 without Dame. 2-5. Not great. Not terrible. Losing at Milwaukee, at Cleveland. Can't call it. Like, whatever. Those are good basketball teams and tough places to play. It's like, oh, they couldn't guard Giannis Antetokounmpo. No one can. They struggled against a really good, could not handle the trio of Garland and Allen and Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland. Yeah, that's a good basketball team. The Cavs are going to be a handful for a lot of teams this year. Sure, a couple bad losses in there. But in their 2 wins, in the 2 of those 5 in those 7 games, the 2 wins, they beat the Knicks in overtime. Jerami Grant has a season-high 44, and Anfernee Simons has 38. Against the Jazz on Saturday night, Anfernee Simons has a career-high 45. The Jazz were playing a soft drop coverage. He was coming around pick and rolls, setting his feet, and burning them down. You got to step up to the level, Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk, you got to come forward, my dude. He's hit 7 3-pointers. He has 33 points in the first half. You got to step up, my G. What are you doing? Kelly, no. Walker Kessler, no. Oh, my gracious. He had 33 in the first half. What are you doing? How did this happen? But he did. 45, a career high. Anfernee Simons was great. Jerami Grant had 33. In the Blazers' 2 wins, with Damian Lillard on the bench, sidelined, it took a 40-point night and a 30-plus point night from JG and Ant, from Jerami and Anfernee Simons. The loss to the Clippers, Jerami Grant had 37, Ant had 32. Straight up, if Jerami Grant scores 40, they probably win that game. That's how close it was. It came down to it. The margin of error was really thin. They needed 75 from their 2 best players to have a chance to win the games. And 2 of those 7 games, they got it. And I think that exposed the limitations of this roster. They are light on shooting, as my homie listener Scott has been hammering since literally before the season started. The Blazers roster needs more shooting. Scott has been sending me that note often, banging that drum often. That drumming you hear actually in the background is Scott still banging that drum. Absolutely exposed without Damian Lillard in the lineup. Lack of other ball handlers with Keon Johnson sidelined. It's like just Ant and Justice Winslow, just not enough dudes who can handle against pressure, gave Blazers a little bit of trouble. And because of the lack of shooting and the lack of sort of one-on-one creativity, there were nights during this stretch where the Blazers were exposed as the lack of shooting and the lack of true creativity, one-on-one creativity to go score on offense was a problem. There were nights when just pressure defense took Ant out of it and they would turn the ball over, or pressure defense in moments would take Ant out of it. And the Blazers' margin for error was basically like Jerami and Anfernee Simons need to combine for 75. And they combined for 69 like they did against the Clippers. That's not enough. All the other games, not enough. They got to combine for 75. If they get 75, the Blazers can win the game. That's thin. That's thin. But to me, you know what it says? The Portland Trail Blazers have 2 dudes who, when Damian Lillard sits, can go score 35 plus. They have 2 dudes who can go score 40 when Damian Lillard sits. They have not had that. I read this stretch as a positive for this team going forward. They're just 12th on offense. I think they have top 5 upside on offense. I think they can be so much better. Their defense doesn't look very good, but I thought they were going to be bad on defense. I'm not really, I get it. The defense doesn't look very good, and there's nights that just look straight up bad. But I'm much more concerned about their strengths becoming stronger. The offense needs to be this team's strength. And when you see Jerami Grant and you see Anfernee Simons go do what they do without Dame in the lineup, you kind of think man, if Dame gets back rolling and he's healthy and you have those dudes rolling, this is a awesome offensive group. You can basically always have one, if not two of those dudes on the floor who are really, really, really hard to deal with. And against the Pacers, all three of them scored 20. They get rolling. Jerami Grant, 28, Amp 22, Dame 21. Like, it's this, to me, that game against the Knicks that went into overtime, the game against the Jazz on Saturday night, it was like, instead of being like, wow, that's what they need to win, I was like, oh, they can get that? They have two dudes who can go do that? They're going to be okay. I'm not worried about them. If they got two dudes who can do that, they're going to be just fine. They're imperfect. Like I said, like they need some more depth up front still. They probably need more shooting. They could use one other dude who could dribble, and it would be helpful if that dude was 6'8" and could also shoot a little bit and pass a little bit. But what I'm describing is Jason Tatum and Pascal Siakam. You're not going to find that in one person. So eventually a roster upgrade is going to be multiple skill sets across a couple different players, and you got to mix and match. They can get there on offense, even with their limitations, if this trio is healthy. One thing I didn't mention in the injury stuff, because we just don't know, is Gary Payton still hasn't played. At some point, an elite on-ball defender is going to play. I don't know when. The Blazers have been very coy about what he's available to do. He said that he was like aiming to be ready on opening night. I don't think it was reported anywhere, and I may be missing this, that he was aiming that. I've seen some confusion that maybe it was reported that he was supposed to be ready on open night. I don't think that's true. I think he said, I'm hoping to be ready on opening night. And then he didn't do anything in the preseason. It was clear he wasn't going to be ready on opening night. But as we get deeper into December, it's a little bit more concerning that we haven't seen Gary Payton, who's an incredibly likable fellow and probably a darn good addition to this lineup, play. He'll help him a little bit. But before we get to worrying about how GP helps the offense or defense, it's about how these folks, Ant and Grant and Dame, can take this team to new heights. And I think we take this offense to the heights that it should be, right? Like 5, 6, 7 in the NBA on offense. Like they should be a top 10 offense, no problem with this group. And I think the steps forward and the shooting levels that Ant and Grant have alongside Dame, you saw it a little bit against a bad Pacers team, and you saw the Blazers do it while Dame was out. You saw two guys who can go score on their own while Dame's gone. They haven't had this firepower. And here's something that I think matters. Maybe not as much as it's being pushed in some corners of Blazers internet. I'm looking at you, r/Rip City, but certainly matters. Heading into the Pacers game, the Blazers have played the fourth hardest schedule in the NBA. After Sunday, including the Pacers game, they had the fourth easiest schedule remaining. It's changed a little bit because of how bad the Pacers are, according to positiveresidual.com. That's where I'm looking at. I don't think I believe in projecting strength of schedule beyond like 3 weeks, a month. I don't think projecting what games are going to look like in February and March is like a meaningful way to consider predictions about the team. It's not a meaningful thing. But it is noteworthy that the Blazers played a really tough schedule to begin the season and find themselves at 13-11. They played that really tough schedule with Damian Lillard missing 12 games. They played that tough schedule with Josh Hart and Drew Eubanks missing time. They played that tough schedule with Keon Johnson, who would add, skills at the end of the bench when those other folks were missing time. With him out, with Trendon Watford out, with now Nazir Little out, with Nurk missing a game here and there. Like they have done it with injuries. Injuries are part of the thing. They're part of they're part of the NBA world, and every team is going to deal with them. But to me, it is meaningful that the Blazers have stayed afloat a little bit through a tough schedule. And while I maybe don't think like fourth hardest schedule remaining, because I don't think you can know what, like, for instance, the Los Angeles Lakers profile is a pretty bad basketball team if you look at their body of work up until basically they played the Blazers. But since then, they've been a lot better. So, and that was like the beginning of them, maybe a game before that, they lost a pretty ugly one, but like, they're starting to figure it out. It's hard to know, when teams are going to catch their stride, when Anthony Davis is going to start scoring 1 million points, 55 and 17 or whatever he had. Like to me, strength of schedule is best understood in much smaller increments. But you can look at the Blazers December. They got a long road trip, a 6-game road trip with winnable games. San Antonio and Oklahoma City and Houston. OKC twice, even that's a tough team, but still like winnable games. You can look at January, home heavy January. The schedule's going to lighten up a little bit. Fourth easiest, whatever. I think that ranking doesn't mean very much to me, but does the schedule get easier? It certainly freaking looks like it. So they're in a good spot. The offense can get better. The defense can get a little bit better, but it's kind of where they thought we would be. At the beginning of the season, I dare you now to close your eyes, and this is the 24-game check-in. If I said at 24 games in, they'll be 13-11, they'll be tied for the sixth best record in the Western Conference, and they'll be a game and a half out of third in the West. You would take that all the way home. If I told you that Damian Lillard missed 12 of those games, you'd take that too. If I told you that Jerami Grant was shooting above 45% from three and that Anfernee Simons was averaging 25 a game, you would take it all dang day long. I think the last 2 weeks have been a bummer for the Blazers. They've been exposed a little bit, but they've been exposed to being a competitive basketball team capable of improving, and then they got their best player back on Sunday. I'm not here to tell you that they're about to take off and win 58 games. When they were 10-4 and they were on pace for 58 wins, it was mad goofy that people were saying, well, I thought this team was a 55-win team all along. Winning 50 or 55 games is very hard in the NBA. But I thought this team was like a 42-win team. And they're on pace to win something like 45 games. That'll put them in the mix. That's what you ask for from this team. Be enjoyable, be in the mix. And right now, through 24 games, 30% of the season, they've absolutely done that, warts and all. So if you are capable, hold on to your joy, appreciate it, and then when Anfernee Simons has some bad fourth quarters against good basketball teams, don't start tweeting about his salary or whatever. Just remember, he's capable, and things will bounce back, and it's a dang long season. I wish I'd been here for the last 10 days to remind everyone that to hold on to their joy, because it comes back to you. The schedule's going to come back to the Blazers. I think they're in an okay spot, and quite frankly, I think they're in a spot that if you had talked about this in October and said, this is what it's going to look like the first week of December, you would be legitimately excited about that. So remember what the old you was clinging to and tell them that you got it and it's good news and we're going to keep it rolling. That's it for today's show. We're going to have more shows coming along. There is a chance, because my life, frankly, has changed very drastically, that the recording schedule will change a little bit, but I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that's not a thing that happens. Still look for the podcast in your audio feed, midnight. Still look for the video either after the game, depending on when we record, or first thing in the morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time. If things change, I will talk about it here on the podcast. But let's just, for now, let's call it business as usual. The podcast is back 5 days a week. Your only daily Trailblazers podcast. We're rocking along every single weekday. Tell your friends about it. A quick postscript. I was gone for 11 show days. It felt like a long time to be away from this, not because I am some sort of workaholic person, but because I am someone who loves podcasts. And so I know that having something be part of your daily routine and then leave stinks. So I'm not saying sorry. This is not an apology. What I'm saying is I get it. I'm back. I'm in your headphones. I'm on your computer screen, whatever it is. Thanks for the grace that you gave me to live my life as a human. Locked On Blazers is back. Tell your friends about it. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.